In Chapter 9 of the Rhetorical Acts textbook, it talks about the importance of the subject and purpose of rhetorical context, or the topic the audience is encouraged to consider, and the response the rhetor wants to invoke in the audience. There are essentially 4 C's of subject and purpose obstacles. 2 areas of resistance by topics or subjects are complexity and cultural history. A subject is complex when an audience has no experience or direct personal relation with it, when there's knowledge and expertise that is specifically required for the topic, and when the subject is related with other issues and it's too broad to really narrow down. Cultural history serves as an obstacle because the subject has concepts or ideas that are already formed in the past and previously in culture. People could be bored with it, they could have closed minds to certain taboo topics, they can have conditioned responses to emotionally heavy subjects, and they can conflict with their cultural views. Purpose-related challenges that essentially hinder rhetor's effect on audience participation are the costs of responding and the perception that they have no control over the issue. The greater the cost or effort to the audience to participate or take action, the smaller chance that they actually will. They have an opportunity cost of their time, and they have certain priorities they feel need certain amounts of times, and if they feel that this takes too much time and it's not worth the effort, they just won't do it. People also have a lack of sense of control, believing that their individual actions will not have a huge effect on overall or big topics. Examine these obstacles of subject and purpose in the RPC essays of Auerbach and Jurgensen. Auerbach describes the subject of how privacy violations are being committed by big internet corporations to help advertisers target consumers. He demonstrates the 4 C's. The audience can relate to this topic, so its complexity isn't really an issue here. The cultural history formed around the government and surveillance is more on the negative side, seeing how people have become more aware of their surveillance. And it's not exactly an obstacle because it supports his initial claim. The cost to consumers is that they need to be more cautious about their online behavior and what they do in front of cameras. And people control what they can, and they can control their own personal devices or online activity, but essentially they need larger numbers to really address this cause with the government. Jurgensen explains his topic of how society has been oversaturated with internet and phones, and that people are starting to now crave disconnection, displaying also the 4 C's. Most everyone in society can relate to the overwhelming influence of mobile devices and the internet and the obsession of always wanting to be on it, making it not really complex. The cultural history formed by technology and digital devices has become negative now that it's been more implemented, so people are now more proud to disconnect and are trying to aim on reducing screen time. The cost to disconnect is very high for many people because, again, they are also very obsessed with being on the internet, so they're less likely to really disconnect. Many people feel that they have control over their own actions and on their own devices, so that this really eliminates that control obstacle. Overall, the subject and purpose of rhetorical acts are important in persuading audiences. However, they do face obstacles when trying to be persuasive around the subject and purposes of what they're saying. Now looking at Chapter 10 in the Rhetorical Acts textbook, it analyzes the personas adopted by rhetors in an attempt to influence their audience. It is important to present yourself in an appropriate manner with language and gestures to help your persuasive effectiveness on the audience. The persona of a rhetor will essentially reflect their position, occasion, specific purpose, relationship with the audience, and the choices that they're going to make to influence the audience. We essentially accept or believe their claims because we usually trust or respect the presenter if they have appropriate credibility. Credibility or ethos is defined as one of the three paths of persuasion other than logos and pathos. It's also defined as the character of the rhetor, the way rhetor mirrors qualities valued by specific groups or cultural groups, and the attitude audience members have towards the speaker. Attitudes formed about the rhetor prior to their speaking are usually in 5 areas: their reputation, appearance, introduction, their context, and the occasion. The impressions audiences received from the acts include authoritativeness and trustworthiness. The character of the rhetor is directly related to 2 rhetorical processes: identification, which is generally based on perceptions, and participation, which is based on clues or hints the rhetor says so that they can have similar or shared experiences or conclusions. By looking at the RPC essays of Armstrong, Cepeda, Hsu, Gladwell, and Boyd, we can see the importance of ethos and its effect on their persuasive claims. Armstrong establishes her credibility using familiar experiences and language when making her claims that everyone is a poser and they're all just trying different things to figure out who they are. She presents this image of her experiences figuring out who she is through dabbling, making her more relatable and trustworthy to her audience. Cepeda makes the reputation as a Latino and claims that Latino artists are not considering the consequences of frequently throwing around the N-word. Being Latino helps him speak more towards the Latino community and give audiences direct insights into his claims, making him more trustworthy and believing what he says about Latino culture. Hsu takes the stance as a minority, stating that with the increasing diverse population, whites are now becoming a minority. He provides the minority perspective and encourages audiences to make certain connections with their own viewpoints about whites. Gladwell explains his personal experiences being a black athlete and the perspective in comparisons to whites, claiming that blacks are generally factually, physically superior in sports than whites. His own personal experiences gives him the credibility to his claims, and he essentially persuades his audiences towards his points. Boyd takes the position as a knowledgeable observer, explaining how most people share the qualities that they think will impress other people and hide their true qualities, showing how society essentially shapes who we are. He provides numerous relatable examples so that the audience can understand and relate to his claims better. Overall, the rhetor's ethos plays a major role in the persuasive effectiveness of the audiences, establishing their credibility that they can trust.